in Podcasting Show. Enjoy inspiring stories, interesting interviews, and powerful strategies from women around the world. Jennifer Hensel spotlights today's top podcasters, new podcasters, and expert guests. Get tips for leveling up your life, gaining visibility, growing your business, monetizing your podcast, and so much more. We invite you to support women in finding their voice and sharing their passion. It's all about women empowering women.
All right. It says we're live.
Cool.
Here in the Women in Podcasting room. My name is Jennifer Hensel.
And I'm Sarah Heeter.
Yes, Sarah Heeter is here with us today. I'm so excited. Sarah, you have been such a supporter of the Women in Podcasting and helping raise women's voices. And I just really appreciate you so much. And so I was so thrilled when I saw you had a program coming out. And I wanted to make sure everybody knew about it, but also you have so much to teach. Oh, look we have a visitor.
Yeah, I have an assistant, so just forgive me. She was asleep until you went live, so you know how that goes.
Cats are always welcome. Yeah. So I wanted you to introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you see me poking around here, I'm just getting the text sorted out. We're going to try to make sure that this is showing up live, and we're going to share it in a few places. So go ahead and tell us about you. Introduce yourself, if you will. And I know you, but our audience, some of people in our audience might not know you. And then tell us how you started your business, why you started your business, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate the opportunity to connect like this. And yeah, I love the Women in Podcasting group. It's so funny because it's something that I thought about. We needed a community for women in podcasting, and I had thought a Facebook group would be a really good avenue for that. It was something I really wanted to be part of, but I didn't want to start. And so when I saw yours pop up right at the very beginning, when it started to gain traction, I was really excited. So that's been a lot of fun for me, and feeling like you guys are my people. I'm so sorry. I don't know why she's doing this. So
it's okay.
As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Heeter, and I work in podcasting. So I call myself a full service podcast producer and strategic consultant. And what that really looks like is I help entrepreneurs, small businesses, and hobbyists strategically launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts in order to expand an audience, establish their expertise, and make money online. So that's what I do. And primarily, I've been working with people one-to-one to strategically launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. But I really wanted to reach more people. And so it's great because I love podcasting. I love listening to podcasts. I love talking to podcasters or potential podcasters about their ideas. I always have 10,000 podcast ideas. I started my first show years ago and totally had to bootstrap it created a website and did the coding on the back end to create my RSS feed and all this crazy stuff. Now podcasting is so easier than ever. And so especially for women, I think it's so important because our voices matter. And no matter what you're interested in or what's important to you, podcasting is this opportunity to build your own platform and then leverage it to use your voice. So that's a little bit about what I do. And my new program that you mentioned is all about launching your podcast in 7 days. So it's for the messy, fast action takers who just want to start podcasting and get it done without all the overwhelm.
I would imagine too, if somebody dived into podcasting and didn't really fully know what they were getting into, this could probably help them clean things up a little bit too and get a process in place.
And if you start Googling, man, it's such a black hole of information and opinions. And if you don't know anything about tech, and if you've never edited audio, and you don't know what software to use, and you don't know what microphone you need, and you don't have a big budget, and it just gets very overwhelming very quickly. And there's a lot of people out there who fearmonger too, who make it sound like you need to have so many listeners in order to make money, and you need to be somebody and have already done X, Y, and Z to have a podcast that gets traction, and people spreading this lie that it's oversaturated, that there are too many podcasts out there, which is just simply not true. It's so accessible, and just starting and then having some consistency, not even over very much time, just over 3 to 6 months, you will start to see some serious traction. So anybody can do it, literally about anything, and can then leverage that opportunity.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I studied podcasting for 10 years before I finally jumped in.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid with the 7-day start.
Yes, and I'm an action taker. Like during that time I was excelling and learning and implementing taking action on all kinds of things, and it was the podcasting was always in the back seat because of that, but 10 years ago the technology was totally different. Now, like you said,
Yes.
It's easier than ever before.
So easy. Yes.
It's a great time, and there's so much room. Like, it's not oversaturated at all. There's lots of room for everybody.
No, and if you're a person who feels like everybody you know is starting a podcast, that's actually a sign that you're hanging out with people who care about building their platform to use their voice. Because actually there are just over 2 million podcasts globally. That's it. Just over 2 million in the entire world, you guys. And that's including the ones that are inactive. So no, there's barely any podcasts out there. And so if you feel like everybody you know is doing it, it just means you're hanging out with other, good company, other people who want to use their voice. And that's it.
Yes. And 2 millions. I mean, and it was only a year ago, it had just reached 1 million.
Right. Exactly.
So a lot of people jumped in during the pandemic that maybe they won't continue. There's a lot of pod fade going on, but so give us your tips today on the 3 critical keys to podcast success.
Yes. And this is important whether you have a podcast already or are thinking about launching one. So no matter where you are in your podcasting journey, these 3 keys apply to you. So the first one is probably the most obvious if you've spent any time on the business side of things, on running a business. But even if you're a total hobbyist, this is just really, really important, which is you need to nail down who your ideal audience is. I cannot tell you the number of times I have talked to people who have said their podcast is for everybody. It could benefit everybody. It's for everybody. Or these really vague things like, it's for anybody who's going through a transition. It's for anybody who's trying to connect deeper in a relationship. Like, listen, that's everybody, right? And so we want to dial in further than that. It is probably true, if you're feeling like that about your podcast idea, that people could benefit from it. But the reality is that not everybody's looking to seek out content like that. So whatever it is that you're trying to create, spend some time thinking about who is looking for content like that, who is seeking content like that. And so that's going to help. The other piece of this is thinking about what sort of demographics, and I don't mean, race or age or something like that. Age might be relevant, but I mean demographics like where they are in their life or what they're experiencing, what they're up against. Think about the people who get you really, really excited to connect with. If you were going to invite these people into your home to hang out for the evening, or if you were going to go out and do something together that's related to your podcast topic, who are the people you would be most excited to build that community with and to spend that time with, and focus on just those people. So by doing that, we create a really strong sense of intimacy with our listeners, because the beautiful thing about podcasting, even more than video, is that it simulates a phone call. So by being audio only in someone's ears, especially 30 minutes to 45 minutes to 60 minutes every single week, how many people do you sit on the phone with for 30 to 60 minutes weekly? It's very small, if anybody, right? We hate talking on the phone these days. And so the people that we're willing to do that with is a very, very small group. So creating that sense of intimacy with your audience is the beauty of podcasting. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're really, really clear on who that ideal audience is. So that is the number one key, is knowing your ideal audience. Should I just keep going?
Perfect. Yes. I muted myself because, of course, today they're doing the annual, it happens once a year, spraying down of the outside of the building. So I'm going to mute myself while you're chatting, and I'll let you just go for it.
Okay, sounds good to me. All right, so key number 1, your ideal audience. That's the first thing you need to know. Key number 2 is your goals for your audience. What do you want them to get out of your show? And this is going to be both short term and long term. If somebody follows your show for the next year, which, by the way, if you do weekly episodes, that's 52 episodes for a year. So that's something to think about when you're picking your topic and when you're getting ready to get started, especially, is that as you're picking a podcast topic, it better be something you can easily come up with 50 plus ideas of things to talk about that feels exciting and fun for you, because otherwise it's going to become a slog real quickly and you're going to have trouble on that content treadmill being motivated to keep going. So if they listen to your show for a year, what do they get? What is it going to be like? What is that experience going to be like for them? Are they going to have learned something? Are they going to be connected to a community? Are they going to have taken a journey internally? Is there going to be some kind of internal transformation? There are so many things that this could look like, right? There's a lot of podcasts that are also geographic based. And I know, Jennifer, you've done this before, where, it's a way to feel connected to your community, maybe. And so if you listen for a year, you're going to feel a deeper sense of connection to the community where you live. And that doesn't have to just be a geographic community. That could be any kind of identity piece. And so think about what that long-term goal is, but also what's the short term? I have podcasts that I listen to when I need my butt kicked. And I have podcasts that I listen to when I kind of need like a warm hug. And I have podcasts that are super actionable to the point where as soon as I'm done listening, I'm already taking action. And I have podcasts that are just a way to disconnect and stop thinking about business and stop thinking about personal development and just laugh and just enjoy a period, half hour, an hour of entertainment. So there's all these different short-term things to think about as well. And this is really important to start thinking about what's the brand, what's the energy, because even as a hobbyist, when you start a podcast, you are creating a brand. And so what is the experience of people interacting with your brand? And get really, really, really clear on that. So that's the second key. So who is your podcast for? What do you want them to get out of it? Now, a lot of us, especially women, are very service-oriented people. We're helpers. And so 1 and 2 are usually the easiest ones to do. But here's the third critical key to success. You need to have goals for yourself. What do you want to get out of this show? So often, even in this group, when I've asked, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of your podcast? Especially women, our answers are so often about our audience. I want to help people. I want to reach people. This is what I want to see for other people. What do you want? Because here's the thing. I mentioned 52 episodes a year if you do a weekly show, which is pretty standard. That is a lot of content creation. And if you don't know what you want to get out of this podcast, it's going to very quickly feel like a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy that you're not seeing a return on. If you don't know what you want to get, you're not going to see results. And it's okay if that changes, right? But here's some examples of goals that you could set for yourself. We talked a little bit about expanding an audience. And so maybe you're starting an audience from scratch. Maybe you want to build a community of some kind. Maybe you want to build an email list. Maybe you want to have enough loyal listeners who know your name and know your brand and know what you have to offer that you could eventually write a book, right? So you're trying to establish, you're building a platform. And then what numerically does that look like? Because we hear this elusive figure. If you haven't started Googling yet, if you do start Googling about podcasting, or if you start engaging in these groups, you're going to start hearing about 10,000 listeners a month. It's a number that everybody loves to talk about. It's just like on Instagram, having 10K followers so you get the swipe up. It's the same kind of thing, where it's this number that actually doesn't mean anything unless you're using a sponsor agency that's getting sponsors for you, which, by the way, is not the only way to get sponsors. In fact, it's not even how I recommend getting sponsors. So you're going to start hearing about this, but is 10K a month realistic when you're first starting out? I mean, first of all, no, it's not. But second, so let me just start there. But secondly, if you don't have any kind of audience that already exists, that's a really, really high number to be expecting out of the gate. Additionally, you need to think about what is your niche. So the longest running podcast that I have is actually for Girl Scout troop leaders. So in the US, we call it Girl Scouts. In Canada, Girl Guides, similar thing. But I have been a troop leader for many years, and I've been involved in Girl Scouts since I was 5. I want to talk about Girl Scouts all the time. It's one of my favorite ways to spend my time. And bless my friends and family who know how much I love it and support me, but they don't care about it. And so I wanted an outlet to talk about this thing that I love with other people who love it as much as I do. And that's why I created my Girl Scout Troop Leader Experience podcast. And by doing this, I have created this community that's amazing. But the reality is that 10,000 listeners a month is super unrealistic. There aren't a lot of Girl Scout troop leaders to begin with. And out of that limited pool of people, they're not all listening to podcasts. And the ones who do listen to podcasts aren't necessarily, as we say in Girl Scouts, bleeding green, because green is the Girl Scout color. They aren't necessarily looking to just be immersed in Girl Scouts all the time. And so that's not the podcast they're looking for. It's a very specific niche. And so my numbers aren't going to look like Joe Rogan's numbers. That's what everybody loves to use as the example, right? For the Joe Rogan experience. That's just true. It's never going to be that, because there aren't millions of troop leaders. There just aren't. So when you're thinking about numerical goals, I like to say, get excited about your first 50. Get excited about your first 50 listeners, because if we go back to that phone call example that you're trying to create, you're simulating an experience where you're having a 30 to 60 minute phone call every week with this person. Can you imagine having that level of intimacy, that level of know, like, and trust with 50 people? That is so powerful. And so just get excited about these initial milestones. Get excited about 50, get excited about 250, get excited about your first 1,000. When you first see that 4 digits of downloads, get excited for that. And so when we're thinking about the goals that we're setting for ourselves when we first get going, it's important that we have these goals and that they're realistic so that we can see a return on our investment. If you're like, I'm starting a podcast because I want to make enough money to leave my 9-to-5 and become a full-time podcaster, and I want to reach hundreds of thousands of people so that I can write books. Then you release your first episode or your first couple episodes and you get 50 downloads. You're going to feel really disappointed. And so I just want you to start at the beginning. Now, those are perfectly reasonable goals, right? You can monetize from day one if you want, or you can have a goal to monetize when you get to a certain point in a certain way. There's all kinds of ways to monetize a podcast. And I know, Jennifer, that's something that you've talked about in our group before, and I'm sure you're going to continue to talk about it. That sponsors are just one way that we tend to think of when it comes to monetizing a podcast. But we can also have affiliates. We can also sell our own products and services. We can also create memberships or subscription models. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to actually monetize that podcast, selling physical products or selling books, ebooks, whatever. So there's so many different goals that we can have for our podcast, and we can have lots, and we can have some that are short term and we can have some that are long term, but you need to have goals for yourself, and you need to be tracking those milestones and celebrating every single milestone along the way. So that's number 3, is the goals for yourself. So ideal audience, goals for your audience, goals for yourself. And that is what makes or breaks your podcast.
Oh, nice. Those are great points. I agree with all of that. That's so amazing. And And that's so great that you bring in all these other rich elements, because some people do get too fixated on the numbers. And I love stats and
Me
analyzing
too.
analytics, and so looking at email stats over the years, website stats, all this kind of stuff, and then looking at the podcast stats, it's much lower. But what I like to think of is when I would do workshops, and I would purposely have smaller groups, 20 to 60 or so, not conferences, just my local workshops. If I want 20 people in the room or 50 or 60 people in the room, I mean, I made a business. I made a full-time income off of that. And
Yes.
so those 50 listeners are keys. They're champions actually in your community who
Yes.
can help build your audience. So it's really
Absolutely.
valuable. Getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people listening is fantastic. I mean, those people are engaged with what you have to say.
Yes, and it's true even with sponsorships, because there are so many numbers that you can leverage beyond just the total number of people who listen to your podcast. You can leverage the growth that you have week over week or month over month. You can leverage where those people live, because if your potential sponsor is geographically focused, then you want to be able to talk about your geography. But yes, if you have 50 listeners who absolutely love you and trust you and will take action on whatever you tell them to take action on, you could have a way better conversion rate selling something than if you have 10,000 listeners that maybe, like you, listen when they have a chance. You're not their number one podcast, right?
Yeah.
So you can't really measure just by the total number of people. It's the connection that you're creating with those people.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. So I wonder if we have anybody live now. Now, I know a lot of people may just catch this later. They might not be in the live yet, but if we have anybody in the live, and I'm trying to look on my other device here, if we have any comments or people in the live, but I was going to see if anybody wanted to come on and ask questions of Sarah. Yeah. Well, we've got Sarah here. Put them in the comments, and even after the fact, Sarah will come back and check this post.
Yeah, definitely.
With you. And then tell us a little more then about how you can help people and your program, because what I did was I put a link and a discount code in the post that people can grab to get, I think it's $100 off. Is that right?
Yes, $100 off. Exactly. Yeah, it's really important to me that podcasting is as accessible as possible, especially for women. I think that, there's so many memes out there about not having a seat at the table and pulling up your own chair, or some other building your own table, or some other version of that, of not being included or not being represented. And I think that the beautiful thing about podcasting and how accessible it is that we can all just build our own platform and use our voices and leverage that platform through podcasting. And it's been a really beautiful experience for me, because even with that initial podcast for Girl Scout leaders, I mean, that was technically my second podcast, but it's my longest running one at the moment. That's still current. And I get messages regularly from people talking about how it's impacted them, how it's impacted their relationships with their daughters, how it's impacted their entire lives. And like, just when I start to feel that I can't monetize that, because that one's not my own brand, right? And so just when I start to feel like, what's the return on investment? I get one of these messages about how I've impacted someone, or how I've reached someone, or how this person just wants to tell me about an experience that happened as a result of a podcast episode that they listened to of mine. And how could I ever stop? And to feel like, man, I've now connected with women across the country, and frankly all over the world, who have had experiences with Girl Scouts, who want to have experiences with Girl Scouts. And it's a way that it's brought me this community and given me the opportunity to connect with people everywhere. And to be able to just build a platform that you can wear sweatpants and you don't have to put makeup on, and you can just sit in your, frankly, on the floor of your closet and create a platform for yourself. And it doesn't matter who you are, or where you come from, or what you've done. If there's things that you like or that are important to you, you can create a platform based off of that and reach people all over the world in many different countries. When you speaking of stats and the different geographical stats that you can check out, the reach is incredible. And so I want podcasting to be as accessible as possible. And I hate the bad advice. It really gets under my skin. And I am sad when the overwhelm stops people in their tracks. And especially for women, so many people don't start podcasts because they don't feel confident in what they have to offer. And so my course is laid out, this program is laid out to help you launch in 7 days. So in 7 days, we're going to validate your idea, make sure that you, like I mentioned, that you have 50 really solid ideas for your podcast, that you're excited and you're ready to go. So we're going to validate your idea. We're going to plan a content strategy. We're going to talk about what goes into a launch. I show you, sharing my screen, how to edit your audio, how to get your episodes on all of the different platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, all of them. And we talk about hosting and RSS feeds, but not too much, because it's meant for those of us who are busy. We have other jobs, we have other ways we're making money, we have families, we have friends, we have all these competing priorities. And so there's bite-sized steps that you take every day for 7 days, and in 7 days your podcast is live and it's online. And so that you literally go from validating your idea, even if whether you have an idea or you have no idea, you're just interested in starting a podcast, to being online and being able to just start promoting and growing your show. 7 days. And so that's the whole purpose of this course. It is all pre-recorded, so you can go at your own pace. If you're an overachiever, you can do it in a weekend instead of in 7 days. If you're a little nervous, or if you have a lot of competing priorities, or you're trying to figure out your co-host situation and you're trying to navigate balancing multiple schedules, you could stretch it out if you want. I don't recommend spending more than 2 to 3 weeks on this, because the longer that you drag your feet, the less likely it is that you're going to do it. You need to just take action and just get started. And although your first episode will end up being your most listened to episode over the life of your podcast, you're not going to have people breaking down the door. Once you post it, it's not like, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me. That actually doesn't happen for like 3 to 6 months, that you start realizing, wow, there are hundreds or thousands of people who are really invested in my message. So it actually builds progressively over time. So the sooner you start, the sooner you get to whatever those goals are. And so that's why it's laid out the way it is. It's just take little bite-sized actions. And in 7 days, with those little bite-sized actions, you're not going to get overwhelmed. I'm going to tell you just enough about the technology that you know what you're doing, but not enough that you don't need to be. Listen, I hear all the time, I'm allergic to tech. I'm allergic to tech. I hate technology. That's okay. I'm not like a tech guru, and I can do it. And I've launched my own 4 podcasts, and I've helped people launch many podcasts. I actually produced and consulted on over 1,500 podcast episodes professionally in my business. And so I promise I can help you. And we're going to get it done easily, smoothly, but strategically. And that's what it's for.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I wish I
Thank
had
you.
that.
When you were starting.
About having a podcast. That is amazing. What a great help that would be to anyone who wants to dive into this. And the thing is, as we all know, as soon as you get those first episodes out, and as soon as you get sort of the setup, past the setup phase, because a lot of stuff's just one time.
Right.
And then you're rocking and rolling. And so, you know, if you can help people just pass that barrier, it is such a freeing feeling. And the other thing too is what I love, what you said about your audience feedback is so rewarding, but I also find it super rewarding connecting with other women podcasters. Like, it's just such a joy for me. It's such a collaborative experience, and all podcasters, all the guys too, you know, we just have such a great time connecting locally and globally, internationally. It's such a wonderful community overall. Like I've never connected. I had built a large business network that was just for entrepreneurs and things like that. And it was fantastic, but I have never felt the warmth and the connection and the support of each other like there is in the podcasting community. It is just unbelievable. I just absolutely love it. So I'm really glad you're offering this, because it's going to help people to give them the confidence they need to start using their voice to improve the world. And that's what we all
I
want,
hope so.
right? Is to
Yes.
help other people and to get our message out into the world to help others. So thank you so much for doing that. So I don't think too many people are showing up live with us today, but I know people will stumble upon this and look for it later. So I know
Yeah,
you'll catch up on the post there and
definitely.
answer
Yes,
people's questions if they have any about your program.
I'll definitely respond to you if you have questions or concerns or comments or anything. Please go ahead and drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you. You can also then shoot me a private message if you want to. I know some people are weird about that, but please, my private messages are always welcome. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear about even if you already have a show, I'd love to hear about it. If you're thinking of it, I'd love to hear your ideas. One of my favorite things other than Girl Scouts is to talk about podcasts. So I always want to hear about it. And if you just want to learn more about podcasting, whether you have a show or not, I also have a podcast about podcasting called The Scrappy Podcaster, and it's anywhere you listen to podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, any of those. And so some of those are just me teaching you what I know. It's talking more about the same kind of stuff we talked about today. And some of those episodes are interviews with other podcasters. And so, you know, very similar to what you're saying, the support and the inclusivity of the podcasting community is amazing. And if you have a podcast or you're launching your podcast, I'd love if we could connect, and you can, if you want, come on my podcast and share about your launch experience, and or if you have an established show, what your show is all about and what your journey has been and what obstacles you've overcome along the way. So so you can also connect with me there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you're going to have me on the show, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's a given. Yes.
That would be fun. So yes, so that is such a wonderful invitation. So just so anybody who's listening to this on the Women in Podcasting show, all the links that we're talking about will be in the show notes at inspiredinfluencers.com. Go to podcasts and then the Women in Podcasting show. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being here today. And I highly
Thank you
recommend
so much.
everybody check out your program.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful. And similarly, if you know somebody who's been talking about starting a podcast, give them a little push.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get
Yes.
as many people using their voices, building their own platforms, and then leveraging those platforms.
Yes, we're all stronger together.
Yes, I love it. Thank you
right,
so much.
thanks.
Thanks for everything you do with the community, Jennifer. I love it.
Oh, you're welcome.